History often celebrates kings, conquerors, and commanders who spent their lives preparing for war. Yet among them stands a man entirely different from the rest, a quiet schoolteacher who rose from ordinary beginnings to become one of the greatest military minds of the modern era. Võ Nguyen. Giap's journey is not merely the story of a general, but the story of a nation that refused to bow to oppression. With no formal military education, no inherited army, and no foreign training, he defeated two world powers and carved Vietnam's name into global history. His life remains a powerful reminder that genius can rise from the most unexpected places, and that the true strength of a nation comes from the spirit of its people. Early life of a reluctant warrior. Võ Nguyên Giáp was born in 1911 in the modest village of An Gia in Quang Binh province. The region was known for its harsh conditions, with rocky lands and relentless poverty, yet its people possessed a fierce patriotism. His father, Võ Quang Nguyen, a Confucian scholar, became one of the greatest influences on his young mind. Their home echoed with stories of legendary warriors like Tran Hung Giao and Emperor Quang Trung, heroes who had defended Vietnam during its most vulnerable times. These tales shaped Giap's sense of identity long before he stepped onto a battlefield. As a student at Quoc Hoc Hu High School, he quickly stood out for his brilliance. He excelled in history and political thought and spent countless hours studying revolutions around the world. However, the more he learned, the more troubled he became by the injustice happening around him. French colonial rule had pushed millions of Vietnamese into poverty. Heavy taxes, suppression of language and culture, and brutal punishments for anyone who dared to resist had turned Vietnam into a land of silence and fear. Yet in young Giap's heart, a storm was quietly forming. In 1930, he participated in anti-colonial movements, which led to his arrest. Even as a young revolutionary, Giap refused to compromise his ideals, and this early imprisonment became a turning point. It hardened his resolve and convinced him that the liberation of Vietnam would require not just courage, but patience, strategy, and unity. A nation in chains and a revolutionary awakening. The early 20th century was a dark period for Vietnam. The French controlled land, resources, and the lives of millions. Farmers who had once thrived were now starving. Intellectuals who dared to speak were imprisoned. Entire villages could be punished for the actions of a single protester. Still, beneath this oppression, whispers of rebellion continued. It was during these turbulent years that Võ Nguyên Giáp encountered Nguyen Ai Quoc, later known as Ho Chi Minh. Their meeting would change the course of Vietnamese history. Ho Chi Minh saw in Giap not just passion but discipline, intelligence, and the rare ability to blend theory with action. He entrusted him with a mission that would have intimidated even seasoned military officers: to build the revolutionary army that would liberate Vietnam. Giap accepted the challenge without hesitation. The Viet Minh, founded under Ho Chi Minh's leadership, had no resources and no professional soldiers. They trained in forests, fought with outdated weapons, and lived in constant danger. Yet their cause gave them strength. For Giap, this was not simply a military task, but a moral duty. The revolutionary army he helped create was built not on weapons, but on faith. Faith in independence, faith in unity, and faith in a brighter future. From classroom to commander, Giap's intellectual foundation became his greatest strategic advantage. He studied past wars with the determination of a scholar preparing for an exam. Sun Tzu's philosophies, Napoleon's campaigns, and the guerrilla warfare techniques used in China shaped his thinking. But Giap was not satisfied with imitation. He adapted every lesson to Vietnam's unique geography and culture. Mountains, rivers, and jungles were not obstacles to him. They were allies. He formed strategies not from a textbook, but from understanding his people. He knew they did not have modern tanks or aircraft. What they had was extraordinary resilience. This belief shaped his doctrine. Wars are not won by machines, but by human determination. Giap emphasized patience, discipline, and the ability to endure hardship. His soldiers marched barefoot through forests, lived in underground tunnels, and carried supplies on bicycles for hundreds of kilometers. Under his leadership, the Vietnamese army transformed into a force capable of challenging even the most advanced military powers. The miracle at Dien Bien Phu. The year 1954 marked one of the greatest military upsets in modern history. France built a massive stronghold in Dien Bien Phu, confident that the Viet Minh would never breach it. They controlled the air, had modern artillery, and believed their fortress was unbreakable. Foreign observers predicted an easy French victory. General Giap thought otherwise. When he first inspected the battlefield, he abandoned his initial plan of a quick attack after realizing it would cost too many lives. This decision revealed his leadership style: calculated, human, and deeply responsible. Instead, he orchestrated a long, painstaking siege. Tens of thousands of soldiers and volunteers moved artillery up steep mountains, often inch by inch. They dug trenches, carried ammunition by hand, and created an entire underground network to surround the French base. For 56 grueling days, the Viet Minh slowly tightened their grip. The French forces, cut off from supplies and exhausted, eventually collapsed. When the Vietnamese flag rose above the destroyed fortress, the world was stunned. A small nation had defeated a major colonial empire. Dien Bien Phu did not simply end French rule in Vietnam. It marked the collapse of colonialism across Asia and Africa. Giap had achieved a victory so dramatic that military academies still analyze it decades later. A new war, a new challenge. After the French withdrew, Vietnam entered yet another struggle, this time against one of the most powerful nations on Earth. The United States brought advanced aircraft, massive bombers, helicopters, chemical weapons, and financial support. Yet Giap remained undaunted. He understood that America could dominate in technology but not in endurance. His strategies during the American War reflected a deeper psychological understanding. The Tet Offensive of 1968 became one of Giap's most defining moments. Although Vietnam suffered heavy casualties, the offensive shattered American confidence. It proved that the Vietnamese resistance was far stronger and more organized than the US had believed. International opinion shifted, and the war's political landscape changed forever. Another brilliant creation of Giap was the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Hidden beneath thick jungles, this complex network of roads stretched across thousands of miles. It allowed the North to supply the South despite relentless bombing campaigns. Many military experts still call it one of the most remarkable logistical achievements in modern warfare. Even though Giap did not personally command the final assault in 1975, his strategies formed the backbone of the victorious campaign that liberated Saigon and unified Vietnam after decades of conflict. The heart behind the legend. What set Võ Nguyên Giáp apart from other commanders was not just his intelligence, but his humanity. Soldiers often described him as calm, gentle, and deeply compassionate. He made decisions carefully, always considering the lives of his troops. He visited the front lines, listened to the fears of young fighters, and understood their sacrifices. His humility earned him admiration not only from his own people, but also from foreign generals, who, years later, studied his campaigns with awe. Despite the hardships he witnessed, Giap believed that war was only justified when it led to peace. For him, victory was never about domination, but about giving future generations the right to live free from foreign rule. A farewell that moved a nation. When General Võ Nguyên Giáp passed away in 2013 at the age of 102, Vietnam entered a period of mourning rarely seen in modern times. Millions lined the streets during his funeral procession, carrying flags, flowers, and portraits. Elderly veterans saluted as he passed, children bowed in respect, and entire families traveled across provinces to say goodbye. His funeral was not merely a ceremony, it was a national embrace for a man who had guided their country through its darkest and brightest moments. The legacy of a giant. Giap's impact extends far beyond Vietnam's borders. His victories at Dien Bien Phu and his strategies during the Vietnam War are studied in military colleges across the world. Historians often compare him to Sun Tzu, Napoleon, and even Alexander the Great, yet his path was entirely unique. He proved that a self-taught commander could stand alongside history's greatest military minds. More importantly, his life carries a timeless message. A nation's true strength does not lie in wealth or weapons, but in the unity and courage of its people. Giap demonstrated that belief, faith, and sacrifice can overcome even the most overwhelming odds. As we close the remarkable journey of General Võ Nguyên Giáp, we're reminded that history isn't shaped only by kings or conquerors, but sometimes by quiet teachers who rise when their nation needs them most. If you enjoyed this story and want to explore more untold legends, hidden histories, and powerful narratives from around the world, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button.